Okay, we are live.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the AIB Pillar 4 committee meeting. This evening, we have some folks with us that I'd like to have introduce themselves for all of you. Ellie, we want to start with you.
Sure thing. Good evening, everybody. I am Ellie Mitchell, and I am the director of the Maryland Out of School Time Network, which also houses the Maryland Coalition for Community Schools, and glad to be co-chair with this group tonight. And so do we want to do our advisory board members first and then our guests?
Sure.
All right, well, then I'm going to pass it to Jaden, and Jaden, you can pass it along from there.
Sure, I'm Jaden Ferris. I'm a soon-to-be high school graduate. I am the student board member, and I from Anne Arundel County. Happy to be here. I'll pass to Dawn.
Hi, everyone. Dawn Jacobs Martin here. I'm the Director of Special Education Teacher Preparation at the University of Maryland College Park and Pillar 4 member. And I will pass it over to Lorraine.
Great. Hi. So I'm Lorianne Moss. I'm a policy. It's okay. I get it all the time. I'm a policy analyst at the Maryland Community Health Resources Commission. And I will pass it to my boss, Mark.
Mark Leckner, Community Health Resource Commission. Great to see everybody. Jen?
Hi, Jen Clatterbuck, Administrator for the Community Health Resources Commission.
Kara, you want to go ahead?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Kara Burhans. I'm the Strategic Initiatives Coordinator at Washington County Public Schools and Pillar 4 Advisory Member.
Rachel?
Oops. Hi there, everybody. Rachel Amstutz. I am the Operations and Policy Director over at the AIB, and glad to be here today.
And finally, I'm Chandra Krantz. I'm a supervisor of world languages and English learning with Harford County Public Schools. Ellie, will you want to start our agenda off?
Yeah, sure. So I think our first part of our agenda is for Rachel to provide us updates from the AIB. Rachel, did I catch you off guard?
No, I was on guard. I was just on mute. Sorry about that. Okay, so we have just a couple of quick updates. And to start with, last month, I think I emailed to notify all advisory committee members about our outcomes, Blueprint Outcomes work group. And that work is well underway. Pillar 1 and Pillar 2 have been involved right now. So we're moving through the pillars. So you'll get a notification before the Pillar 3 and Pillar 4 groups come up. And then at that point, if you're able to attend, you're invited to attend the meetings. If you're not, that's fine. We get it. They are all recorded and available for review later, but it's a pretty big task to get outcomes and the math of the objectives and goals for the entire blueprint done. Our goal is by August. There's couple hundred in there, so it's a lot of work. So we're working to clarify. It's been a really phenomenal group, but just to keep that on your radar, that's going to be coming your way if you're available, probably in another month or two. But we'll give you a heads up when it comes. There'll be some really good instruction if you're wanting to see what the other groups have done. And what the main group is doing. Those recordings are available as well, and you can kind of see the scope of the work and the way that it's being approached. And then biggest update we have would be that every plan that was due on March 15th was received on March 15th. So all LEA plans and all state agency or entity plans were into us well ahead of the deadline, which was awesome. So we've had a couple busy days downloading everything. We're preparing documents for our partners who translate into Spanish. We're kind of doing that behind the scenes work and getting ready to do the review process. So there will be a multi-pronged review process between the AIB and then separately MSDE will be reviewing the LEA plans. And So we will be inviting our advisory committee members to also, take a look at those. They're all posted on the website if you're interested, on the implementation plans page. And we are working on figuring out how and what that looks like for our advisory committee members, but definitely feel free to take a look at the pillar 4s for every submission, and probably with our guests today, you'll probably want to see their plan as well, which we know took a lot of work to put it together, but I'm sure that extra eyes and ears and ideas and just knowing where things are going will help our committee stay informed of what's to come. I was also asked to give a quick update about what's happening with our other advisory committees. So broadly, they're all in the. Some committees meet more often than others, and that's fine. We had asked for at least quarterly, and so far everybody's been exceeding that because there's been plenty of work to do. We have Pillar 1 has a meeting coming up soon, but they've also been involved with the outcome measures group, so that's kind of taking their time right now. Pillar 2 met earlier this week. I was not at that meeting, but they worked with the deans and directors from the universities and are building a partnership so that they can collaborate on some of the topics that overlap between teacher prep programs and what that looks like for recruitment or alternative pathways. They're building that relationship to just expand the dialogue. And in the meeting before that, they started talking about career ladders. Pillar 3 has been meeting pretty regularly, just like you guys have, and they've got a lot. Pillar 3 is kind of 2 parts. It's the biggest part really of the plan, or the biggest chunk inside the plan. And so there's the CTE side and the CCR side, and their work has been aligned with the CTE committee. They've also been partnering with them to stay connected and know what's coming and to figure out where to be able to weigh in or to be connected and providing the perspectives. And then they're getting ready for another meeting soon, but broadly, all 4 committees are in a pretty similar place, and it's just time to dig in, to dive in and see kind of what's coming next, and then to continue with the main goal of providing the AIB members insights and perspectives from around the state, from all the different vantage points that everyone here brings. So I know we'll have time for that a little bit later today to hear from each of the members of what they're hearing related to Pillar 4 in their area. I think that's it for me for updates. I guess I can say there was a meeting on the 16th, an AIB meeting. We are hiring, and the rest of our members, we will have a staff of 15. It's broadly been 3 to 5 of us for 10 months, and we're hiring. So the first position out is on our website and on the state of Maryland. It is our executive, a special assistant role. So that one is out for 2 weeks. And so if you know anybody looking for a new opportunity, please pass them our way if they're interested in that position. Other positions will be up in the coming weeks and months. We'll be hiring a research director. We'll be hiring some policy analysts. We'll be hiring a data person, communications. We've got a whole list that will round out the 15 teammates that we have. So if you can help spread the word, we'd really appreciate it. Chandra, any other questions or any questions from anybody else about what the AIB has been up to?
Not for me, but thank you, Rachel. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Anyone else?
No, I just wanted to flag that I think the date for the Pillar 4 or the first Pillar 4 data outcomes is April 6th. If folks want to flag that on their calendars right now. I know I am, because I'll be traveling right up to it. So I was really happy to see that it was when I was back, because I definitely want to attend that session. So just wanted to get that on people's calendars while they're thinking about it. All right. Well, we have some wonderful guests tonight. Part of Pillar 4 is the consortium of coordinated community supports. 4 coordinated community supports is that it's I always get tongue-tied around the name, but and I know, as I told them when we met, there are so many things to track and follow within the blueprint, so many meetings to attend that we know that everybody can't get to all of them. But this particular component is so critical and important that I thought it was, and Chandra thought it was important for us to understand more about where this is going right now. And we had a great conversation and learned a lot. And I think you're going to learn a lot too from their update. I'm still digging into the implementation plan that was one of the many that was submitted on March 15th. And so take it away, whoever wants to start from the consortium team.
Great. Thanks for that introduction, Ellie, and thanks everybody for taking the time to meet with us. We'd like to sort of have a ongoing relationship with our colleagues from AIB. So please, let's just agree that we'll all get together another time. Does that sound good? Okay. Jaden, you're a student in Anne Arundel County?
Correct.
Great. High school or?
Senior. So
Great. What are you doing next year?
figuring out where I want to go. So
Okay. Great.
whoever
Excellent.
gives me the most money.
All right. Well, good luck. Yeah, all of us, Jen, Lorianne, myself, we all live in Anne Arundel, and actually most of us close to Annapolis. So yeah, good luck to you. Okay, we have a slide deck that we have prepared. I have to say I have childcare responsibility, so at 5:30 I got to go get second grader. Okay.
Rachel, can you allow screen sharing, please?
Okay. We're going to jump into the slide deck in a minute, but can I just ask for show of hands? Has anybody heard of the Community Health Resources Commission? Okay, there's one. We met you the other day. Ellie too. Anybody else heard of the Community Health Resource Commission before? Okay. Well, we're going to go in between different state entities that implement the consortium. There's the consortium, which we're going to talk about in a minute. It was established in the Kerwin bill. And then there's the Community Health Resource Commission, which has been around since 2005. And Jen, Lorianne, and myself are employees there. Sound good? Okay. Would folks like us to run through the PowerPoint and then take questions at the end, or do you want to make it more interactive? What's your preference? Looks like you got a thought, Jaden. Jump in.
I have no preference.
Okay. Ellie, Chandra, what do you guys
I'd say run the PowerPoint, because then I think people will have things. I think people will keep their thoughts as we go, and then we'll jump at you at the end with all those thoughts.
Okay, cool. All right, well then let's, are you running the slide deck, Jen?
Yep.
Okay, great. We should have all of our names on there. So you also heard Lorianne Moss and Jen Clatterbuck. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So what we'd like to do is just brief you a little bit about the statutory objectives of the consortium. And for those of you that have read the implementation report that Lorianne wrote, that's clearly spelled out there. We'd like to talk with you a little bit about the collective impact model and how we're going to operationalize creating these new community support partnerships, which is the term in the bill. And then we're going to give you a timeline and some thoughts about the first call for proposals, or RFP, that we plan to issue later this spring or summer. Does that sound good? Is there any objective that anybody else has that's not on this this list here? I can only see some of you, so speak up if there's something else you'd like us to cover. No? Okay. Let's keep rolling, Jen. So as I said, the Community Health Resource Commission, or CHRC, where I've been since 2009, has been in the law since 2005. I happened to work on the bill at that time. And we had that first statutory mission of expanding access to health services in underserved communities. And we do that by an annual call for proposal process. Areas that we funded have been primary care, school-based health centers, dental care, maternal child health. This past week, we completed our annual call for proposals for fiscal 23 and awarded Jen 21 proposals requesting $8.5 million, supporting programs in every area of the state. And Jen just sent out a press release yesterday. If you want to hear more about the types of grants that we've been awarding, happy to provide that to you. Many of the projects are designed to help low income. In fact, most are designed to support low income folks, regardless of their insurance status. You see that it's been around since several years before the Affordable Care Act. And we also look to help build the capacity to deliver high quality, affordable health services by safety and providers. These are folks like local health departments, federally qualified health centers, behavioral health providers, free clinics, and yes, school-based health centers. Lorianne and I staff the Council on Advancement of School-Based Health Centers. It's been around in different versions since 2015, and Lorianne's more or less the executive director of the council, and we think our work there probably led to us being asked to do this program here. We also implement this new program called the Health Equity Resource Act, which is a geographic-based initiative that asks us to saturate these underserved areas with an array of resources to help eradicate health disparities, diabetes, maternal child health, others. And then sixth, which we're going to talk about most today, is the Consortium on Coordinating Community Supports, or Consortium, which we all know was put into the Kerwin bill. Let's go to the next slide. So it was about this time of the year, 3 years ago, right, when our lives changed, right? And I got this call from the Director of Legislative Services, and she said, "Hey, Mark, got a minute?" I said, "I just want to answer that, yes." "Well, I was talking to the Senate President, and I need you to look at 10 pages in the Kerwin bill right now. You have 90 minutes. Get going." It was quite something. And that became the 10 pages 170 through 179 of the Kerwin bill. And it used this phrase I've never seen before, and I've worked on a long time. It's the consortium will be housed at the Community Health Resource Commission. So we spent some time in the veto override and all of that, thinking about how we could operationalize the consortium and the commission. And then that was further refined in Senator Gazzoni's bill, Senate Bill 802, which said, look, here's the policy responsibilities of the consortium, and then the commission, which we'll talk about in a minute, serves as the fiscal agent or the banker of the initiative. Consortium has about 24 members, 2 vacancies. It's chaired by former delegate Dave Rudolph from Cecil County, a lifetime educator. And we've been meeting for about 7 months, about once a month, the full consortium. And the 4 subcommittees I'll talk about in a minute have been meeting on a weekly basis almost, right, Lorianne? Yep. Okay. And we are also thrilled that the bill writes into the law that technical assistance will be provided by the National Center of School Mental Health, the University of Maryland School of Medicine. Let's go to the next slide. Great group of 24 members. You have a cross section of education folks, behavioral health folks, government people, really great folks. Let's go to the next slide. Love this graphic that Lorianne did. It shows the key actors or entities involved in this initiative. On the left-hand side, you have the consortium. They're sort of like the engineer that will design the framework that we're responsible for building. On the other side, you have the Community Health Resource Commission, serve as the fiscal agent. We'll do the contracting and the grant making and so forth. Then on the bottom left, you have the community support partnerships. Those are the entities named in the law. We'll talk about them in some degree of specificity in a minute. And then you have the National Center of School Mental Health giving technical assistance, and all this stuff is Lorianne's. It's like a Spider-Man, great, right? Yeah, all this stuff is interrelated. Let's go to the next one. 4 subcommittees that we formed pretty quickly on. In fact, I think we did it the first meeting, didn't we, Jen, Lorianne? We had the first one, the Framework Design and RFP, or Call for Proposals Subcommittee. It's co-chaired by the superintendent and Dr. McKeith, one of our commissioners. You'll see most of these have a pairing of a health and an education person. The second one, Data, is chaired by Dr. Larry Epp from Shepherd Pratt. Third, Outreach and Community Engagement, chaired by Tammy Fraley, Allegheny County Board of Ed. And then Best Practices or Programming is chaired by Dr. Campo from Kenny Krieger and Derek Simmons from Caroline County Superintendent. Each of these 4 subcommittees meets several times a month, usually on the computer. We record the meetings, and they're sort of like, for those of us that have worked in a legislative environment, they're sort of the work engines of the consortium. They develop work products and they bring them to the full consortium for approval. Let's go to the next slide. So Lorianne pulled some excerpts from the actual authorizing statute. And some of the key ones are, they gave us 12 responsibilities. That's a lot. But we sort of think the overarching one is to develop this statewide framework for the creation of these coordinated community support partnerships to meet student behavioral health and other needs, mainly wraparound. We just some words that we pulled from the bill. The partnerships would be community-based, family-driven, and youth-guided, and to serve a geographic area. So we've been wrestling with how to achieve this policy responsibility for the last, what, Jen and Lorianne, last like over 2 years, because we started thinking about this and then the bill was vetoed and we're like, oh, okay. And went back to the drive. I'm like, okay, yeah, okay. Let's go to the next slide. Love my visual graphics. So we have on the left-hand side, the coordinating community support partnership equals, like a math equation. First part, the backbone or lead grantee. And then the second part would be the service providers or the spokes or subgrantees. And then you see the fact that the school system will have to play an integral role in the mechanics and implementation of these community support partnerships. Let's go to the next slide. So this is another visual that shows you how a hub, and we're going to talk about those in a minute, might be, for those of us that like sports, the quarterback or the backbone organization of their geographic area that would coordinate the delivery of services and then hold the individual spokes accountable. We feel there'd be a huge role for the local school system to play, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, this is going to be my last slide, and I'm going to pass it over to Lorianne. So really early on, in addition to working in legislature, I also worked in the O'Malley state stat program. Did anybody watch The Wire? Has anybody seen The Wire? Has anybody seen The Wire? I can see. Yeah, it's totally like that. That's totally like that. Yeah, it was the lowly data analyst, haranguing that's, cabinet agencies for, accountability. So when we looked at these 12 things we had to do, we thought early on, right, Jen and Lorianne, we had to be able to go to the legislature who drafted us to do this work and have concrete, measurable deliverables that we gave back to the legislature early on. We said, look, we're going to do these things. So first, we wanted to be able to show that we're expanding access to behavioral health and wraparound services to students and families and have a way to measure that. Second, we want to be able to say that we could improve student well-being and readiness to learn at the individual student level, and we have a plan to measure that. Third, it was clearly written in the bill, we want to be able to promote or foster positive classroom environments, and we have a plan to measure that. And then fourth, we want to promote the long-term financial sustainability of these efforts, as demonstrated in one way by increasing revenue from Medicaid, commercial insurers, and hospital community benefits. So we felt very early on we had to be able to produce these concrete, measurable goals by which the legislature could hold us accountable. And so we feel that if you get everything onto one page and you say this is what we're going to map to, this is one of the more important slides, and I would really ask for folks' feedback from AIB if this looks like it's headed on the right track, or if you think we're missing something, please consult slide number 11 and tell us if we're moving in the wrong direction. I'm going to pause there, grab some water, and then pass over to Lorianne. Ellie, you look like you want to jump in.
No, I'm just reading and thinking.
Oh, okay.
Great. And I'll add, for readability purposes, we actually have a third column. These are our indicators that are reported by the grantees. We have a third column of data, all kinds of data. This is your absenteeism data. This is your YRBS data. This is data that's going to come to the grantees, and we will also be working with that data. So I know this is a sophisticated group. So I just want to make sure we're looking at other data as well. And I've shared some of that with our friends at AIB. Okay, great. So to 2023, we have this vision of where we think this program needs to go. Regional, probably jurisdiction level partnerships, coordinating the services in that area. But we know we're not there right now, and we know that the services are needed now. So what we are considering and proposing is sort of a 2-track RFP for this first RFP that will be grants to build up the capacity of the hubs, which are really the backbone of the partnerships, as well as grants that will go directly to the spokes. In the future, we see grants going to hubs who then work with the spokes as their subgrantees. But because we're not there yet, recognizing the urgency of the situation for this first RFP only, we're intending to do direct grants also to the spokes. So maybe we can advance to the next slide, and then we'll come back to this idea. Okay, so again, the two tracks, and again, the majority of the funding we think would go to the spokes. And we also anticipate that this first RFP would utilize 2 years of funding, and it would be probably 2-year grants for this first RFP. Next slide. So we scrutinized the bill, and the bill does not say who should be a hub, who should be running the partnership, who should be that lead grantee. We've done a lot of outreach, and we've listened to a lot of folks. We've heard some suggestions that perhaps local behavioral health authorities would be well positioned to play that quarterback role, local management boards, universities, maybe some other groups. Maybe there would be places that would want to stand up a new entity to play that role. Our view is that the legislation is sort of deliberately agnostic on this point of who should be leading it, and we think that's evidenced by the fact that they asked us to run this program. They didn't go to BHA, they didn't go to MSDE. They're wanting something new, something fresh. So the consortium is feeling sort of agnostic on the issue of who should be a hub, but it's more important that a hub be able to do the core functions that a hub needs to be able to do. So we have been looking at 3 core functions that a hub needs to do: service delivery, coordinating all those many service providers in their geographic area. Fiduciary, they need to be able to receive the grant dollars, and they need to hold then their sub-grantees ultimately accountable for that. And there'll be a data component. Again, at full implementation, those spokes, those providers will be reporting their data to the hubs. The hubs will analyze and put that data together, and they will report that data up to us. And so they'll play a key data. They'll also use the data in decision making, and be good stewards of data. So let's advance. So again, a lot of discussion about where the hubs should go. There's a one-to-one relationship, right? Each partnership has a hub. Each hub serves one partnership. We want it to be a logical system. We don't want overlapping hubs. We want ultimately, at the end of the day, every school is covered by a partnership. In our outreach, we're hearing that probably the jurisdiction level is the best fit for a partnership. That's your school district level. Even we're hearing from folks that, for example, on the shore, that are very accustomed to working together on behavioral health things. They said, but once the schools are involved, we often do better as a single jurisdiction. We've also considered that maybe a larger jurisdiction could have more than one partnership. And again, the smaller jurisdictions certainly could join together for a regional partnership if that was something that made sense for their community. The last bullet speaks to something Mark said earlier. The LEAs have to play a really strong role in this model. Obviously, you're dealing with kids in schools. So anyone who's going to be a hub really needs that letter of support from their LEA. And what we hope is that there will be kind of one emerging entity that applies to be the hub for each region, and there won't be multiple entities vying for that. So we're really looking for the community to develop consensus. As you know, in education, a lot of things are local. So we're not going to pretend that we have the solutions and all the answers here. Let's advance to the next slide. So here's some of the activities that a hub will do. They will need staff. They'll need dedicated staff. You can't just ask them to take existing staff to take on added responsibilities. So we see permanent funding for staff.
I can take over. So yeah, so these are the key activities of hubs, and I'll just direct everybody to what Lorian put in the box. We're looking for the capacity building, that second tier of track RFP deliverables, to be 1, an asset map, and then 2, a needs assessment. And then we think that those 2 deliverables will then inform the second RFP that gets released probably in about 2 years from now. Let's go to the next slide. So this is the first track. We're moving over now to those spokes. We'd like, our experience in grant making, the Community Health Resource Commission, we really think that competitive grants are really result in better programs that are implemented rather than just, mandatory grants. So we think that the grant should be awarded on a competitive basis, and we'll be developing a transparent review process so folks know how grants were awarded. We think the applicants, and we'll be able to provide them data when we provide the RFP, we'll be able to demonstrate need and then show how the grant funding and programming will address unmet needs. And we think it's pretty clear throughout the bill that the funding that the commission provides cannot duplicate or supplant other funding. And we're going to require applicants to demonstrate that their request for grant funding is in fact differentiated, let's say, from the community schools program, which AIB knows a lot about. Let's go to the next slide. Also, these individual grantees, the future spokes, they'll get their first grant from the commission, but as part of that contracting process, we're gonna get the, if in your mind's eye, if you kind of have like one track's the spokes and the grantees are going down this track, and then the hubs are going down this way, and then the second RFP, those two tracks will converge into a single place such that there'll be only direct grants from the commission to the hubs, and then the hubs will then redistribute funding to the spokes. Let's go to the next slide. Oh, can we go back one slide? I'll show Lorianne that I'm remembering. Right. I wanted to, the last bullet there. Lorianne and I have had a call with the Association of Private Community-Based Providers, and we were asked a couple of questions about what would be the role of school districts. And I was reminded that during our first public comment period this past fall, there was this sentiment that the schools and school districts, given that they're getting resources through other parts of the blueprint, shouldn't be getting the precious finite resources that are in the consortium. Did you want to expand on that, Lorianne?
Yeah, I would just say we heard from the education folks as much as anybody that they've got enough on their plate right now. They're trying to implement the rest of the blueprint. That this is really to bring the community into the schools. Yeah, so that funding would not be either hubs or spokes.
Let's go to the next slide. So, so these are some examples of the types of grant-based activities that we anticipate the service providers requesting to be able to do. And what I'll just highlight, which is what Lorianne put in red there, we've been getting a lot of feedback from the community-based providers, the ones that bill Medicaid, that there's activities that they do that Medicaid covers, and there's activities that they do that maybe the local school system covers, but then there's a whole nother swath of activities that they don't get reimbursed for. And so we've been really impressing upon the future applicants that they should be asking us to fund activities that are not reimbursable or fill in the gaps there. Let's go to the next slide. Some more examples of permissible uses of grant funding, which, as we said earlier, was informed by a pretty thorough 12 questions, 81 comments, Lorianne, of the comment period this fall. Essentially, the grant funding is designed to help startup or operations or activities costs, but not necessarily capital or building costs. Let's go to the next slide. Lorianne, you want to take over this one?
Sure. This is a new slide that we've added to our deck because we understand this group has a particular interest in English language learner students. You all probably are aware that for many reasons, this is a population that often has unmet behavioral health needs. We see that with our other grant programs as well. We thought you'd be interested to know, as a matter of policy, CHRC, even in its other grants, requires applicants to demonstrate that cultural and linguistic competency, and that those factors are evaluated as part of the application review process. And frankly, these programs work better when they are delivered in a cultural and linguistically competent way, and that's an important thing to consider. We also have been talking a lot about equity in the distribution of our grant funds. So all applicants will need to demonstrate that unmet need in their community, and they'll be given data sets to do so. One of which is the Maryland School Report Card, which includes that measure of ELL students. So that's something that we'll be looking at in the distribution of grant funds. The fourth bullet was on a previous slide, but I think it's germane to this conversation too. The grant funds could be used to provide services to uninsured students. These are students not covered by Medicaid. Often that's your undocumented population. We also have been hearing a lot from community providers about the need for funds for interpretation services. And so we feel that's very much within the scope of what the consortium dollars could be used for, particularly when there's if things that they can't get reimbursed by Medicaid. So let's move to the next slide. And this is also a new slide to our usual repertoire. We just wanted to inform you, we've been looking at a number of evidence-based programs. The National Center for School Mental Health is playing a really integral part in all of the planning that we're doing. And now they will be intimately involved in the technical assistance program. So one of the consortium subcommittees is digging into, are there maybe a handful of evidence-based programs that we can push out really at the state level with sort of centralized support, and building kind of a learning collaborative among all the LEAs, trying to build that a sort of a statewide approach. We recognize that the need for some local flexibility, absolutely. But there are a number of things that we think could be implemented statewide, and that would really improve the quality of the services that our students are receiving. So as I say, that is still a work in progress, but that is something that we thought that this group might be interested in hearing about. Next slide. I think we're close to the end. So maybe I'll send this back over to Mark.
Okay, so this is right up my alley, running the trains on time, right? So I mentioned that this is the second public outreach period that we have. The first was this past fall, which guided a lot of the content here. We're big believers in getting feedback and getting, we want to make sure that the RFP is responsive to the needs of the community. So we're in the middle of our second public engagement. That's what we're saying, Lorianne, right? Our public engagement campaign here, or time period. And we're wanting to do this, it's intentional, several months before the RFP is released, because we want to road test some of these ideas with key stakeholders. Like I said, we had a call with the local behavioral health authorities earlier today. Yesterday was the behavioral health providers themselves. And we're going to continue to think through who we should be talking with. And we'd love to get your referrals. This group give us referrals for folks that we'd like us to go to speak with. Right now, it's the three of us. You have the full strength of the consortium staffer, though we will be looking to recruit for a director down the road. Rachel, we won't be competing with you, I promise, for your staff. We don't want to do that. We don't want to get in AIB's doghouse for sure.
Thank you.
And we'll put your thing in our newsletter, by the way. Lorianne does that as well. We'll put that in the March newsletter.
Awesome. Thanks.
So we're right now in this pre-RFP outreach period, the next couple months, and then we'd like to release the first RFP in late May or June. And then application will be due later this August. We'll review the proposals in August and September. And then our goal is to have the first cycle of grants be resulting in additional or enhanced programming the next school semester. That's what we'd like to do. And that's what we've told Senate leadership is our goal. It's a lot. This is a lot to do. And just for comparison, our regular RFP, which had 55 applications, requesting 35 million. We sent that out, let's say in Halloween.
Yep.
Okay. Well, we just made the awards last week. So, this is an aggressive timeline here, but we think that the Lorianne, right? If you don't mind, I'm just going to use this first time. We think this meets the moment of crisis that we find ourselves in for lack of access to behavioral health services for students. So that's why we're really pushing ourselves to kind of get things right and to get services out and to recognize that there's a crisis, a sense of urgency here and a crisis out there. So I hope that should be about the end of the slides, and I'd like to put that down. Yep, great. And leave the balance of our time with your permission, Ellie and Chandra, to just talk and get feedback, please.
Great. Does anybody have any questions or specific feedback for the team, the consortium team. I keep calling it the consortia, but it's the consortium.
Please don't give us another consortia to staff. We just need
A singular
One's enough.
consortium.
just need one.
I have a quick question. I noticed on the list of fiduciary responsibilities for the hubs that maximizing Medicaid reimbursement was one of those pieces. And I'm just wondering, like, because that, the talent of doing that, my understanding, it can be quite complex, and understanding those systems and making systems talk to each other. So I'm just wondering if there's some kind of, if you have a potential hub who has all the other capacities, but that hasn't been within their purview in the past, or is there some kind of technical assistance around that particular element?
Yeah, so the more we go down that Medicaid path, we had a briefing in mid-December at the consortium's public meeting, and we had the folks from Michigan tell us how they do it, which basically said that services would be reimbursed for all kids that are enrolled in Medicaid, quote, not just ones with an IEP. And that's what they do in Michigan. And so there's some interest in doing that, but the folks in Michigan also had shared with us that shift, which also, had a huge financial windfall for the state, as one would imagine. It also had the unintended consequence of having some of the community-based practitioners transfer over to the education system. And so that's something that we want to try to avoid here in Maryland. And so we're thinking through, on your point, Ellie, how can you maximize Medicaid and other revenue attainment without deteriorating other systems that we have in place. So the more we go down the Medicaid path, the more I'm like, ooh, this is complicated. and I've had some conversations with the health secretary, and I know she knows that that's a priority. And we've been talking with her Medicaid group, Trish Ryder would be one. And I think that those conversations are going to be ongoing. And it may be that the health department, who has two folks on our consortium, by the way, there's the health secretary's appointment. Maria is the new one, right? Maria Rodasi Stanko, and then a Medicaid person. So in fact, Senator Gazzoni's bill 2 years ago, 802, knowing that Medicaid was going to be a big deal, we recommended him that he put a Medicaid person on the consortium. So I sort of feel like that's its own thing that we have to kind of think through and talk through and get it right, and then report back to AIB. And if you guys have Medicaid folks you want to connect us with, happy to. I think you're going to find our general approach is we like to get as much information as possible, look at it, and then start to make decisions.
I just wanted to recognize we've been joined by Joe Menko, who's one of the AIB board members. So I'm happy to have him here. Hi, Joe.
Hey, sorry, I had a conflicting meeting, so I'm here late, but I caught the tail end of the presentation. So thank you to the team from the consortium for all their work.
I wanted to thank you also for recognizing the significant need for our EL population. It is a growing population in our state, and especially in the county that I'm in, and the needs that they bring with them are great. And sometimes we're not equipped to even begin to know how to deal with them. So really embedding that in the work that you're doing is very much appreciated. So thank you.
Please give us your technical assistance as we do it too. Sounds like that's something you know a lot about. So please give us your thoughts from time to time, okay? What are some other initial feedback on this collective impact hub and spoke model? What do folks think?
I like the idea. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Menko.
No, go ahead.
I like the idea of the hubs. And initially I understand awarding the grants to both the hub and the participant. I get that, but I like the idea of them actually, it's like little small entities owning a piece of what they're responsible for. And so dealing with an area and regionalizing things, I think is going to be a powerful move.
Thank you.
So I was a late ad, so I don't know if this was addressed, but were you envisioning a lot of these behavioral supports to fall more in like the kind of tier 2 realm, or like would they be tier 3 behavioral supports?
Thanks for that question. So, as I've gone down this consortium path, I need to constantly remind myself of the tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 level here. We think that in the first RFP, we'll probably get a combination of grant proposals for all 3 tiers. And ultimately, we think that the hubs, let's say there's like 25-ish, maybe 30 hubs across the state, will be responsible for coordinating programming at all 3 levels. And we anticipate that the National Center on School Mental Health will be providing technical assistance for all 3 levels. Go ahead, Lauren.
I was going to just add 2 things. One is that we, in our first public comment period, we said which of the 3 levels of MTSS should we prioritize, and we really heard all 3. And I will say that the National Center and others have really been pushing us, particularly to not to neglect that level 1, those universal, and then especially sort of tier 2, particularly given the workforce shortages. So workforce shortages, I know it's affecting, excuse me, everybody trying to implement these blueprint programs. But the more you can do on the preventative side, the more you can do in the early interventions and the small group side, it helps, right? There's not enough providers if we wanted to give everyone tier 3 services, and tier 3 is not really appropriate for all children's needs either. So,
yeah, I mean, since you're arriving a little bit late, nice to meet you. I would say, generally speaking, our approach is going to really try and strike a balance here of having statewide standards and public accountability and expectations, because these are huge public resources, while also the flip side of that is empowering local communities to develop programs that meet those local communities' needs. And that's that balancing act that we're trying to achieve.
In thinking about the balancing act, I've been looking really a lot at just your second goal for the consortium, improve student well-being and readiness to learn. And it's so big, just with like the idea of the social emotional pieces or the academic functioning, and then the behavioral piece as well. And I just wondered, have you all thought about unpacking it a little bit more, or even considering breaking it down to 2 separate goals, particularly because schools aren't going to be submitting. And I know their idea or their connection of thinking about the social, emotional, the behavioral supports is, are we seeing an impact on academic functioning, achievement, improvement? And so I guess I just wonder about that side of it, knowing that schools won't be actively submitting for this.
I'm going to let Lorraine jump in here in a minute. I love your term about unpacking. I'm going to just a couple of immediate things, and then Lorraine can jump in a minute. When we were thinking through and looking at the bill and so forth, we really gave a lot of thought as what are the overarching deliverables that we want to be able to achieve, and how are we going to measure them. And pretty early on, it was Dr. McKeith actually. She said, "Well, this is good, but how are you going to show that you helped?" impact students at the individual student level. And that took some doing to think through. And so that's the overarching goal, that second one. Joe, we had 4 overall goals of the consortium. That's number 2. And so I'm going to kind of pass over to Lorianne here. We want to, we have different metrics that we want the grantees to be able to collect and report. And of course, we'll be HIPAA, and I know just a little bit about FERPA, we're going to be mindful that you got to de-identify data and so forth. So that was our thinking in that second one, that we wanted to be able to show that the whole impact of these activities doesn't just expand access to services, which is important, but is actually improving the lives of the students, or for those of us in health planning, the target population, all of Maryland students. Big undertaking, but we do have thoughts on how to go about measuring that. We'll let Lorianne switch to another phone. Is there another comment or question?
I just wanted to say I was excited to see the community schools coordination bullet point. That's, my thing. And I was thinking that when and if there is a more universal community schools needs assessment, that could really be a very high-powered tool for a hub to determine what some of the service needs are within individual schools and help identify specific partners that provide those specific services. So again, just excited to see that coordination. I do think it's going to be challenging to manage the supplement, not supplant piece of the community school funding, because first of all, schools are getting way different amounts of funding. They're not all getting the same amount of funding for community schools. And they get the same amount in the personnel, but not the per pupil. And the per pupil is really where the services would be purchased from, I would think, ultimately. So all those community schools are going to have very, very different capacities for what they can do with their dollars. And then what they do with their dollars would be driven by the needs assessment. Just all those layers of what's reimbursable, what's it's going to be complicated. That's all. I don't really have a better comment about it than that. But just understanding that you're going to all community schools are not going to look the same once the phase, even with the full phase in terms of what resources they have available to them. And it's actually going to be the higher poverty schools that have significantly more resources, but we're still talking about high poverty schools when we're talking about 56% of students living in poverty. So you're just going to have, I think you're going to have to think about that when you're tiering how you're thinking about supplement, not supplant community school resources in that phase.
Thanks for that. And if we could, come back to you as we get further down the implementation track and bounce some ideas off you. We're grateful that the superintendent's been very engaged. And then of course, Mary Gable is also another consortium member. I think she's pretty involved in the community schools program. So we're going to be like attached at the hip, as the expression goes, with MSD on that to have them help us try to disentangle all of that. We know it's a massive undertaking for sure. But shame on us if we didn't try, right?
Exactly. Well, I love your optimism. It's great. It's great positive energy about this work. And so does anybody else have any other questions for our consortium, or can we let those folks go on with their busy lives?
I don't have any questions. I just think it's awesome, the groundwork that you've done, and I'm excited as a public school employee. I'm excited to see how this work comes to fruition.
Thank you. Well, you guys are reading our report. It wasn't 99 pages, right, Rachel? I think Lorianne clocked in at like somewhere between 35 and 40. She's a succinct writer. You can take Lorianne's documents, you can bounce a quarter on. They're so tight. They're great. But if you guys have any questions that come up after you read the report, feel free to just give us a call. We view you guys as important partners here, not just sort of like overseeing we want it to be a dialogue and have it be more of a, what's the word here, horizontal type relationship than a vertical. We feel like a lot of you now hearing your backgrounds can help us think through some of these things. And so please give us feedback, good, bad, or indifferent. We really want the relationship to work. And we want to be able to meet the legislators' expectations. When they drafted us for this work, it was, this is like my 24th session here. I've been at this a while, and that's like in my top 3 things. I'm like, this is a lot. So it could be great or it could be horrible. So I want us to be great. So thanks for letting us give us your feedback, and let's just plan to do this on a regular basis. Does that sound good, Ellie and Shauna?
Thank you.
Thumbs up. Great. Thank you. Good to see you as always, Rachel.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Next up on our agenda is a little follow-up to our special education work group conversation we had. There was a letter that was submitted to MSDE and to the school board and probably to AIB and to just about everybody from the Special Education Advocacy Coalition. Everybody reviewed that letter, and had some thoughts where there was some synergy and in agreement, and then maybe some places where we thought there was maybe a slight difference, but we thought we could come up with some things that we would agree with. So the plan, MSDE plan, was obviously submitted on the 15th. The plan does talk about having a work group, but it does not fully describe the work group in the way that I think was hoped for by some of the advocates. So right now it talks about sort of utilizing existing work groups. Some of those work groups maybe not as real or active as folks might want them to be. It also doesn't really talk about how those work groups would be utilized in the same way that the ELL work group was specifically created for the purpose of looking at the blueprint, making recommendations, as other work groups have been created specifically for the blueprint. So I think they still have some concerns. I am asking for that. I think there's a fresh letter coming in response to what was in the implementation plan. And I'm asking when they're comfortable to share that with me, to share it with me, and I'll share it with all of you. And I guess at this point, I'd say, just open-minded consideration of what the EAC has to say, and see if there are ways that we can be supportive in encouraging the best practices to be implemented in terms of, putting together a special education work group. I will say, I agree with many of the advocates that given the importance and the impact special education has, it gets kind of short shrift in the blueprint from an implementation standpoint. I mean, obviously there is a special education weight that has increased and there's dollars attached, but in terms of like the recommendations of the blueprint towards specific actions around special education, I feel like there's a lot of more work that could be done there. And I don't know if anybody else wants to weigh in on that, but I do think it is a little concerning to not have unless you're being very directive with the bodies that exist and making sure that they are representative groups, to not have a dedicated work group for this topic seems where we've had one for ELL, we've had one for CTE. It just seems like a bit like we're that it's not meeting the full requirements of what was actually in the implementation plan from the AIB. And I don't know if Rachel or Joe has anything others to say about that, or any of the other work group members. But I guess my ask would be that we read the updated Special Education Advocacy Coalition letter and see where we all stand in relationship to that, and see what we might be able to join in voices on making sure this continues to get the proper attention that it deserves.
No, I really appreciate that plan and the attention to it. Just with like when we think of the different disability classifications, the range of needs, the number of strategies, not having another work group who's going to like really look carefully at what are we recommending, what are we putting in place that's tangible, is concerning. So I do think it's very necessary. And I hope that we can support it in really pushing for more support and more people being part of that.
And I don't know if this topic will be taken up by the AIB, and now that plans are out and you're going to be digging into everybody's plans. But I just think since this is in our pillar and it's such a hugely, I just think about how much how many students are impacted, the outcomes we've had for special ed for so long, like how we can't dig a little deeper on this just seems, I don't know, unfortunate. I don't know, Joe, if you have any reactions to that, or no, go ahead, Dawn, please.
And I was just going to say, in the teachers too, like giving them tools that are evidence-based that they can actually use and put in practice. I feel like we're setting them up not to be successful, not to get the gains and the outcomes that we're looking for, if we're not giving more clarity to what the blueprint is actually looking for and wants in place.
Yeah, I mean, I can only, address this as one of, 6 members of the AIB, but I feel like, there's conversations going on between AIB staff and MSDE to, work with MSDE to try to institute this body and identify individuals who would serve on it. But, to me, it seems like it's within MSDE's best interest and, the best interest of the state and, and students across the state in order to really dig into this in a pretty robust and comprehensive way. So, my hope is that this is not the this is not the end of the conversation, and a comprehensive work group will be established, and there will be robust conversations around this. And I do think this is laden with a lot of challenges, because I think for like you think about the good work that was done on the EL work group, I think this is there's many aspects of this that that are more complex, and and I think people feel very strongly about a lot of these issues, but I think for students with disabilities, I think in particular, there's a lot of people who feel very strongly about this. So I think it's but just because there are that this is going to require a robust conversation and a lot of discussion, a lot of kind of thinking and leaning into, doesn't mean that we shouldn't take this on. And I'm hopeful that MSD will put the steps in place in order to constitute the work group and begin engaging in a robust dialogue around this.
Thanks, Joe. I think I did just get the get the letter in my email, so I will forward it around to the group. I think it was sent to the AIB as well. It's available for reading, and we can kind of offline work together on what we might want to do prior to our next meeting, which would be in April. So our next agenda item is actually updates from you all, what you're hearing from on the ground in your areas of specialty and geography that pertain to Pillar 4, or things that you think are kind of highlights. I mean, maybe they could pertain to the reports, I mean, to the plans, implementation plans, or anything kind of that is kind of impacting the world of the blueprint.
So at University of Maryland, our dean, Dean Kimberly Griffin, she recently put together a task force in the College of Education that's focused on gathering resources connected to Pillar 4, particularly those that'll be helpful to just inform information dissemination. And so we have Drew Fagan, he's an associate clinical professor, and Megan Madison Percy, she's our associate dean for undergraduate studies. They've reached out to just different disciplines within the college to say, what are just the resources, the tools, evidence-based strategies that you have that you think can really be helpful to inform Pillar 4 and the implementation of that work. So I'm hoping that, that'll be forthcoming. They're working on that now. So I think it'll be a really great resource once it's all put together.
Excellent. Thank you. That's exciting. Nothing for either of our friends out to the west.
we were just excited that we've submitted the plan before it was due and it was complete, and now it's like waiting. So that's the talk on the town. We're going through the budget process, so that's pretty much, we've shifted from AIB now to budget. So
And the same as what Chandra said, and also just gearing up, not only, like I said, with NBC, but looking at all parts of our plans. So we're looking at special ed, ELs, a lot of looking at Pillar 4. What can we do in the next year so that we can, do a better job when we submit next year and have some comparisons for.
Rachel, I don't want to put you on the spot because I did not ask you for this in advance. But I don't know if you have on the top of your head, and if you don't, I was actually going to try to pull up my bill tracker, but I know there's a few bills that made it over crossover that look like they're moving forward towards potential passage, like, for instance, the Blueprint Implementation Coordinator salary bill, as well as some others. I don't know if, and again, I did not ask you for that in advance. So I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you do have some like top of line update on what some of those bills are, it would be great to maybe hear that. And like I said, I could pull up my bill tracker and kind of give my own, but it would take me a minute.
So if you've got something else to jump to real quick, I'll pull up a document and then I can kind of look at the ones. I know last time we had the document kind of prepared of bills that were of most interest to you. But it looks like Joe's going to be able to go ahead, Joe, and I'll go look for that document.
All right, I'll try to fill in the empty space, but I think it's along with my regular job and then doing the AIB stuff. I'm also in the midst of doing my dissertation, and it's on community schools. And I started doing my case study research this month, and it's the study is on school, individual community school that became a community school as a result of the Blueprint. So a school that was became a community school in the 2019-2020 school year. And to me, it's just been remarkable seeing how much growth and progress that really in 4 years, much of which was taken up by a pandemic, that they've built out such a robust infrastructure at this one particular community school. And this might just be an isolated case, but my presumption is this is probably a lot more common than it is an outlier. And I think it just speaks to the power of the strategy and what is being developed at the ground level. And it's great looking at this from a policy lens, but also having the opportunity to do a deep dive within one individual school to look at the litany of programs and supports that are being provided to families, whether it be after school programs or connections to a local recreation center, food pantry, Judy Center supports, Head Start programming, Chicago Parent Program, early childhood play groups, a robust intervention program, a lot of after school clubs, a lot of supports with local community organizations, case management supports for families in need, assistance with electricity and other utility needs. It's been pretty incredible looking at this one case study school that has been a community school for a very short amount of time. And there's been just a really, really tremendous accretion of supports that are available for families within that community. So I think it's good for me, as a board member and as someone who cares a lot about kids in Baltimore City and kids across the state of Maryland, to see that the strategies are making a difference for family in a very real way for families within that one particular community, and presumptively for communities all across Maryland. So hopefully we hear that story over and over again, and people have other testimonials of ways that the blueprint is helping to, you know, make lives better and change lives across the state. But, you know, I think for me in that, you know, this kind of one corner of my research world, you know, I can see a tangible difference within this single school community.
We've gotten some nice press on community schools recently. The Banner did an article. I don't love the title.
Sure.
The title of the article is Maryland is rapidly adding community schools, but are they working? The major content of the article seems to say, yes, they are.
Yeah, right. The article's just full of like examples of it working.
I put a link to the one, and then we also had I think a very nice piece on WYPR with that also included some voices of community school coordinators, which I always love. So I thought I would share those. So Rachel, did we give you enough time to pull up those? Sorry, I really didn't mean to put you on the spot on like that.
No, you're great. I'm good with Google searches pretty quick. And Joe, thanks for that. Congratulations on the work on your dissertation. I know that that's a bear I'm working on as well.
We'll get to tell you, Dr. Joe.
So I'm kind of looking between two documents. I don't know if you found yours as well, but there are a few that were of interest to this pillar that did move forward or crossed over. One of those being the due process proceedings for children with disabilities, House Bill 294. And that one did pass the House and crossed over to the Senate Education, Energy, and Environment. It's also cross-filed with Senate Bill 926. A lot of the other ones, there's a couple, let's see here, that include the consortium in them, like House Bill 770 did pass the House and crossed over to the Senate as well. It addresses public funded kindergarten, the consortium, and the career ladder, some alterations in those. And then looking for other ones that specifically, a lot for pre-K and childcare. Definition of student data, that one crossed over. So far, that is, let me check. Oh, next page. High on our minds for all pillars would be the Maryland Educator Shortage Act that passed the House and also crossed over. The apprenticeships, that probably not as much on Pillar 4 minds, but it did pass the Senate and crossed over. And let's see, another one, Senate Bill 266, which has membership alteration for the consortium, has passed the Senate and crossed over to the House. Let's see, a early child care teacher degree apprenticeship, which is just fascinating in and of itself. That looks like the last one that would pertain to Pillar 4 specifically. There's more for pre-K community eligibility. So those are the ones probably that I would note as of interest to Pillar 4.
Great, thanks. So I think the last part of our agenda is thinking through what we want to focus on in our next meeting. What other topics of interest we want to tackle. I found the consortium presentation really helpful. We have in the agenda one bullet point which might be interesting and might be impacted by the end of legislative session, which would be to think more about the neighborhood tiers system. So if that bill does pass, and understanding what that impact is going to be on eligibility for a concentration of poverty grants. But are there other topics people want to go deep on that we might want to invite a guest in for, et cetera?
I think it would be great if we could have someone from MSD come and talk about the neighborhood indicators of poverty. You know, and I know some of this is contingent upon what happens in the legislature, but I think just conceptually, it would be great for us to hear and for the public to just have more, more accessibility to that. Because I think it could be very groundbreaking for the state.
Yeah, I think that's great.
And I wonder too, kind of to tag on to what Joe said, as far as having MSD come, there were some things in the letter that I wondered how much work is being done by MSD. For example, I know MSD does disproportionality audits. I would like to hear more about that as we think about what's being asked for with the work group and how that marries with what MSD currently does, or maybe where there's gaps.
I also feel like it might be interesting to, maybe reach out to some of the LEAs to have them come and share what was submitted in their comprehensive plan around Pillar 4, and just, kind of elevate some of the creative thinking that's going on, some of the challenges that they're grappling with, and then also just, like have something that is that's publicly available, so that other LEAs can kind of chime in and listen and see if there's things that are being implemented in a different jurisdiction that would be palpable for their particular community.
Yeah, that was one of my questions for us as well, is how do we want to manage the implementation plans if we want to tackle that? Like, do we all want to read? That's what I'm thinking, is that we each take a few LEAs and read their Pillar 4s, and potentially we could then recommend to this group who we might want to hear from. So I maybe we could do, Rachel, maybe we could create like a little sign up document for that. That way everybody could kind of pick which ones they want. I know I have a couple I would particularly like to read. You get that one for sure. Maybe you probably already know that one. And obviously, Chandra, you can do Frederick. Yeah, I think that would be a great way for us to and also maybe to be able to report back at the next meeting, kind of themes we saw, maybe some things we think might need to be shorn up, opportunities for improvement, and but some like opportunities also for cross sharing or idea swapping, for sure. I think that would be great.
Ellie, that would be really easy for me to put in the drive and just share a link with everybody on the Pillar. Probably even today, right after the meeting, I can do that. We obviously have lists of things that I can just copy and paste from and toss in that drive. And then I can also add another topic that I personally would like feedback on. I'm working on the TA plan and the technical assistance plan. And so if there are things that jump to mind as what you're seeing as needs, that would be helpful to for me to include and to kind of have on my radar, just as we think about from the different lenses of everybody and from the geographic spread just across the state, what people need. So
Rachel,
then you can see those.
Would you then make the ask to MSDE? I think it might be two different people who would address neighborhood tiers and could address some of the like plans around their thinking around their pieces of the special ed, that like what they've already been doing, etc. So that might be two different people, but if it could be the same person, that's great too. And then we could plan on, as part of the rest of our agenda, to share out our thoughts about those Pillar 4, and then think who we might want to invite in the future to talk through more with us from the LEA side.
Sounds great. We did have another advisory committee that we went to our partners over at PZAM to ask if there were any LEAs that were interested in speaking. And so we did get several folks that joined Pillar 2 or offered to come speak. So that is another route.
Yep. Instead of us saying, you guys must,
Just
comes
like Jill was
talk to us.
saying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we get people who actually want to come talk to
And
us.
people who have something that they're trying, and that they're
Yeah.
willing to share with others, or they have a success story or an innovation that they're willing to put out there and share. It was Frederick County that came to the Pillar 2, and they really took a gamble, but boy, it opened the conversation. I mean, they were vulnerable to say, here's where we are with this, and it got lots of conversation going. So it was really nice to hear from the LEAs. But yes, I can reach out to MSDE and I'll work on that sign up sheet for the LEA plans. Everybody knows where they are on our website.
Yeah, that's great.
Great.
All right. Any reflections on this meeting? How we could have done it better? Anything we should do differently next time? Anything you really liked about this meeting?
I liked hearing about the initiative. Just getting a better handle on the things that are going on. You hear about these different aspects and things that are happening around the state, but to really understand and then be able to think it through and process it as to, okay, how's this going to work in my area with my schools or with my county? I thought that was very helpful. So thank you. And I like the idea of getting MSDE or other LEAs to come talk, because frankly, we don't need to reinvent the wheel sometimes. And it pays to listen to what others are doing and what they're meeting with success with.
Great. Well, we will be adjourning again the 4th Thursday in April. And I don't have a calendar in front of me to tell me what day that is. But at the same time, same bat channel. In the meantime, I will send everybody on the committee the letter for your perusal and thoughts, so that Dawn had so nicely volunteered to help draft our response. So hopefully we can add our voices to the those of the advocates and help move things forward on that front. So
thank you, everybody. And at this time, we'll conclude our meeting. We hope you have a nice evening, and we look forward to seeing you all at the end of April, last Thursday in April.